Listen, I'm honored to have my guests that are going to bring their own life's experiences in either addiction or in supporting addiction. And I have to tell you, this is going to be a topic that I think hits the hearts and the souls and the minds of many people, not only in our industry, but in life in general. I want to welcome Matt Fanslow. He's the diagnostic tech shop manager at Riverside Automotive in Red Wing, Minnesota. Eric Ziegler is with us from EZ Diagnostics in Peoria, Illinois. Rob Rowsell. Rob, did I say that right?
Rowsell. Very close.
I knew that. Rob Rowsell, shop owner, Family Auto Service, a 4-shop group in La Mesa, California, and author of the book, Addicted to Life, How I Went from Homeless to Extraordinary Success and Happiness in a Short Period of Time. And also Tanner Brandt with us, owner of Tanner's Auto Clinic, LLC, a mobile diagnostic and programmer, as well as a trainer for CTI. Well, let's start with this because this is going to be a very intense show, I know, and let's just jump in. And I want to give each of my guests an opportunity, 3 minutes or less, to explain why they're here and why they're going to bring a ton of value to everyone. Matt, I'll start with you.
Well, I guess my idea was fueled by a hire we did a few months ago. He came in, interviewed, and felt the desire to tell us that he had been fighting an opiate addiction and was on a MAT system where he's receiving medication-assisted treatment. And when he told us that in the interview, I said, "Good for you." And he broke down crying because that had never happened before. Usually when he tells people that, the immediate response is, "Well, why don't you just stop?" And that led me to talk to Carm quite a bit. We've spoken extensively about this, but I think it's a very important topic. And that my involvement in the addiction community is that I'm not really an addict. About 5 years ago, I asked a girl on a date. Oddly enough, she said yes. So mental illness, maybe. But yeah, I learned that she was fighting a opiate addiction, and a year in, she had a relapse. And I thought I understood what addiction was. I had this notion that I knew I understood what addiction was, that it was a lack of willpower. And I had to go on a journey of discovery. Not saying I got this stuff figured out, but I have a much, much different idea of what addiction is than I did. And I feel like my contribution today will be to hopefully change people's perceptions of addiction.
So you're what's called a normie.
I am, yeah. That's what the addiction community, at least that I'm involved in, calls me. I forgot to mention, during her recovery process, she joined a recovery community. And at a soiree, a get-together, a mixer, I was talking to another normie, and I was kind of working on their perception of addiction because they were under the same impression I used to be about the willpower. And the director of this community overheard it and invited me to be on their board of directors. So I've been on that for 3 years. Yeah, wow. 3 years.
Excellent. Hey, thanks, Matt. Great update. Eric.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. Eric.
Okay. Now you got me?
Yep. You got 3 minutes, man. Tell us why you're here.
Okay. Well, my name is Eric Ziegler, and I am a grateful recovering addict and alcoholic. My life story is similar to many in the repair community. I, never sought out being a technician as kind of a means to an end. It was just always part of who I was. And back in the day, so to speak, everybody that worked on cars kind of work hard, play hard, kind of a certain generation, to where like working on cars and drinking beers and stuff like that was cool. I think I knew at a very early age, I probably knew when I was 10 or 11 years old, that I had a problem with alcohol, and it just kind of progressed. I've been in some rather low places in life. I just had always seen myself as a work hard, play hard kind of person. Work all day, then go to the bar. changed jobs pretty regularly, several DUIs, gone to jail, things of that nature. And my mother got involved with Al-Anon years before I quit drinking. And at 20, I was in an alcohol-related accident when I was 23 years old, and I broke both my legs in half, and I was trapped in a car for 6.5 hours in 26-degree weather, inverted, with the compound fracture. My left leg had not only ripped through the backside of my skin, but it ripped through my blue jeans. So I actually tied tourniquets for 6.5 hours, laying inverted while screaming for somebody to find me. It took them 2.5 hours. The engine was actually sitting next to me inside the car, and took them 2.5 hours to extricate me. I spent a year in a wheelchair and learned how to walk again. They told me I'd probably never walk. If I walked, I wouldn't walk normal, and if I would never work again as a technician. And everybody says, "Oh, that's when you quit drinking." And I was like, "Oh no, 3 or 4 more DUIs after that." So, as they say, cunning, baffling, powerful, indeed. I quit drinking on a weird 15-pound bet. But you're waving the pen, so I've gone over my 3 minutes, I think.
But thank you. I mean, there's so much more you can give, but thank you for kind of, if you will, setting the stage, Eric. Thank you. Rob?
Rob Rowsell. I live in San Diego, California. I was living on the streets, homeless and toothless and unemployable in 1999. Stumbled into a 30-day rehab and have not picked up a drink or a drug since that time. About a few months after checking out of that rehab, I walked into an auto repair shop, looking like a crackhead still, a lot of my teeth still missing, and an auto repair shop owner hired me and mentored me for 4.5 years how to manage an ethical auto repair shop. 4.5 years later, I bought my 4th store. In 2004, 2010, bought our 2nd store. 2014, bought our 3rd store. And 2018, opened our 4th store.
And you know what? You did it in 3 minutes, but the story's almost worth an entire episode, Rob. And I started to read your book, and I will tell you what a great book. I couldn't put it down. You've got this gift of just keeping the reader engaged. So
right on. Well, thank you for that.
Maybe we can share how people can get that book later, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Tanner.
My name's Tanner Brandt. I live in Greenville, South Carolina. My ties to this episode is I grew up with a sibling that struggled with alcohol addiction. From the time she was 18, she's 5 years older than me. So that meant I went through most of my high school career having to deal with the side effects that it causes on a family member. If you've ever seen the show Intervention and seen when they get really overwhelmed and a freak out happens and the cops are there, that was pretty much my life for like a good portion of my high school career. So it sucked for me, it sucked for my family. And I think the big thing that I want people to understand is everybody kind of, I think, assumes that people who struggle with addiction come from a bad home or can't do good, they don't have good people supporting them, on and on, things like that. I have a great family, great parents, middle class. My father owns a business, been successful for 30 years. Mother's a teacher. So they did absolutely everything they possibly could to help her, up until she finally decided on her own that she was ready. It was a constant struggle for probably a good decade or more. There's still some things that are side effects of that life, throughout all those years. She has a daughter now that's doing great. My sister's doing great. But because of, a lifelong of addiction, there's still some stuff being dealt with, but overall very big change from, 15 years ago to now.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tanner. Hey, Rob, until an addict is done, nobody can help them, right?
That's a fact. I've talked to a lot of people, and actually, it's the premise of chapter 1 of my book, and it isn't just about addicts, but it's a major part of being an addict. I've had a lot of people come to me and say, "Look, I need your help," and the first question I'm going to ask them always is, "Are you done? Are you done living the way that you've been living? Are you really done?" Because a lot of us as addicts have said that we're done. and we really meant it in our hearts, but we just weren't really ready to take the action that backs that up. Whether it's going into a rehab, I'm a firm believer in 30 days out of your world, whatever your world is, at least 30 days. I know people that believe in 90 days and 6 months and 1 year programs. I know some people that have proven me wrong and done successful outpatient programs, but there's got to be some assistance, professional assistance is my personal opinion, although people have proved me wrong on that. Then once we have that, we also need meetings, 12-step recovery meetings, whatever that is for your category, for support to learn how to build a solid foundation. It's all about the foundation of recovery. But until I actually am done living that way and living that lifestyle and putting up with less than what we really should have, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change at all.
Do we have addicts working for us in the aftermarket and we don't know about it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
Yes.
why we're here. We're here to get this story told. I told my panel, I have no experience here. So I'm here to learn. We're also here to share and get the word out. So how do we know? How do we find that out?
You know, it's funny. I'll tell you a funny story. When I first got hired in the automotive world out of rehab, everybody in that shop was in recovery, and we had a kind of an ongoing joke that in order to work there, you had to have the 7-step memorized and no driver's license. Because all of us were in the beginning stages of recovery, and it's not uncommon in our industry to have that going on at different stages. Some people in the beginning stages, some people like us with 15, 11, 7, 3, 20 years recovered. It's very common, actually. Yeah.
And you may not know, and it may not matter, because we're kind of limiting the talk about addiction to drug or substance abuse. But it's far more wide-ranging than that. And
That's
even
right.
some substance abuse or dependency is not what we would call, I don't want to say not harmful, but it doesn't affect your ability to work or function. You know, caffeine addictions, people that they do not function until they get a pot of coffee in them, right? They can't get going as you're sipping your coffee.
Hit 2 of them.
You may have a germaphobe, where we're getting into a phobia, but I guess where I'm going with this is where I started to take a turn was looking at science. That's where I go running to try to understand something. And the amazing thing with science is that it starts uniting things. And they're finding is that addiction is starting to share a lot of traits, both just behaviorally, but also like wiring in your brain with such things as OCD, phobias, and Tourette syndrome. It's pretty interesting when you think about somebody with Tourette syndrome. They talk about their tics is almost an overwhelming need to do whatever that movement is or say whatever word. And the more they focus on not doing it, the more they can't resist. And finally, they just let it happen and do it. And that's not unlike an addict's brain seeking out whatever that source of pleasure or source of the rush is, whether it's a substance, whether it's shopping, the text going on the tool truck. It could be gambling, sex, video games. The list is long. When we start worrying about it is when it affects your ability to perform daily tasks or care about people on your job over this action or activity.
Yeah.
Guys, I want to just stop for a moment, and there's something I didn't say in the beginning, and that is that we're on Facebook Live. We're also on the Zoom webinar platform, which is where we watch the chat. We don't observe Facebook, but if you're on there with us, and this is good, share this, please. I will look at all the Facebook banter when we're done, and I do appreciate you being here. A family keeps their vehicle an average of 11 years. I want to thank Jasper for being here with us and supporting the show. So where's the first place to turn when the drivetrain fails? Why, Jasper. An engine or transmission is a major purchase, and it should be trusted to a 100% associate-owned company for quality products. Thank you, Jasper, and also Repair Pal. continues to support the show. After 10 plus years in business, RepairPal has become the nation's largest network of independent auto repair shops. Their certification program ensures that customers who go to RepairPal certified shops will receive quality, trustworthy repairs. Go to repairpal.com/shops. Tanner, should we be drug testing?
I think we kind of have to. My reasoning for that is more along the lines of, if the person is open with you and says that they're going through a program, as Rob said, you need to make sure that they're done, and hopefully, they can come out and say, yes, I'm done, and mean it. But knowing that they may be struggling with it, I think if they're drug tested and you can prove to yourself that they're clean, or if they're not, then be able to offer to them and say, hey, you failed the drug test or whatever, you're still on it, I'm still willing to help you. I think you need to be able to know the person that you're hiring, know their background, and a simple drug test is something that can kind of, I guess, start that conversation, and kind of, it obviously is going to protect the shop, but the bigger thing to me is helping that person.
I guess I'd want to throw out a word of caution, because I'm not sure. I think it varies by state what you can do.
No.
And so you'd want to check with that. You'd want to check state law or regulations on how and if you can administer drug testing.
Yeah.
I think the best thing you can do is have stuff in the employee handbook and post it on the wall that you have a drug-free workplace. And I think most places of employment, most businesses are protected to ask for a drug test once a year through a medical physical. If there's an accident, somebody, either the individual gets hurt or a coworker gets hurt, then you can ask for a drug test. And then you have to have probable cause, right? You have to have a good reason to ask somebody to take a drug test. But again, it's very I think it goes very much state by state.
Yeah.
And maybe, like Tanner's saying, maybe you almost have an agreement with this person that it's okay. And that would be different, of course.
Yeah. The biggest thing I think is just that you're trying to help that person stay on track. So you're not doing it to be a nuisance, to be, constantly reminding them. It's something that you want to make sure that that person doesn't fall off the wagon, and that if he does, that you catch it, or, if he or she does fall off the wagon, you catch it, quickly, so that you can continue to help them and continue to guide them down the correct path.
And what I'm going to say is not easy. I'm not saying I don't want to imply I even know what I'm talking about. But usually the relapse occurs long before they take in the substance or do the activity.
Agreed.
And that would be important to try to be aware of that. And I know I'm speaking very vaguely, but the best you can do is try to study up, talk to addicts, talk to people involved in treatment or the recovery community to start learning a couple of signals. And it may not be calling for a drug test. It might be just having a conversation with the person and finding out that their life is in complete disarray, and their learned behavior then to cope is what drives their addiction, not something that maybe us normies would do. Yeah. So the descent into relapse starts long before they actually reach for we're speaking almost primarily about drugs or chemicals here. So before they reach for the chemical, they've already started the process of relapse.
Agreed.
And I think that comes down to getting to know that person. One of the things I had written down as a note is trying to understand the person's past and getting to know them, whether you when you hire them, call character references, not just professional, so you can really get an idea of their life and what they're like, and maybe things that they enjoy doing, so that you can start to see those signs prior. Because if you know nothing about the person at all and you just hire them and they're an employee, it's going to be a lot harder to see that. And
I love where this is going.
Invested.
Thank you. I love where this is going, and I think I want to stay in this area because I'm here listening, and I'm concerned. How do I know that person that I'm interviewing or that person that has been working for us for a while is going into relapse? And do we have enough HR training to help me? Do I, as a normie, I guess, know what to do, what to look for, what to observe? Rob, and I want you to help me lead this, and another question that I have for you, and I have a lot of questions, but I want to kind of move in this direction. Have you ever hired a recovering addict?
I have. Because I'm so open with my story, open enough to write a book about it. But even prior to that, I've been written about in Ratchet and Wrench magazine about our story as well. So a lot of people are familiar with our story. So even during the interview process, it'll come up about how transparent I am and how they knew about my story prior to even applying for the job. So they'll be transparent that they've been through that or they're going through that. It's amazing to me how often that we'll have that conversation in an interview. But I will tell you, no different than, a lot of us measure KPIs and performance indicators for our guys in the shop, whether it's advisors, whether it's technicians. You can't relapse back into that world and not have it affect your performance at work. So there's usually a lot of signs that you can see where really just a normal sit down that you would have with any employee saying, hey, your numbers, your efficiency as a technician, your closing ratio as an advisor, those numbers have really dropped recently. Is there something going on that I can help you with? Is there something we should be talking about? And if you or your manager, in my case it's a manager, has a good enough relationship with that employee, usually it's going to come out, or they're just going to mask it and play the denial game, which eventually you're going to have to call them on it anyways, right?
It's obvious, I'm learning, and it's apparent that there's something going on, and you can't ignore it. I mean, that's your point.
It's the easiest thing to do, isn't it? Is ignore it and hope it goes away, but that never happens.
And I definitely want to hear from Eric, because he hasn't gotten to say much. But I think what Tanner and Rob are talking about, is something called bonding. And you're trying to form a bond with this person. And really, we do it with everybody, but if you can form a bond with this person, a lot of time, there's some people that would argue we shouldn't call addiction, we should call it bonding, because they've bonded with a substance or an activity rather than people. And if you can bond with a person and create a bond, that's going to take precedence over the addiction or the behavior. So agreed. I think what they're talking about is very, very important. And it's kind of something you want to do with all your employees, right? I mean, or coworkers, employees, everybody. Sure. You want to have a bond.
And that comes down to creating a good work atmosphere. You want to have an atmosphere where everybody gets along. It's like a family. Everybody's watching out for each other and can see, like Rob said, watching indicators of even just work being turned out, you can see. And if you're a tech working next to another guy, your bay buddy, as I call him, or bay neighbor, you can see that. And if it's in a family atmosphere, hopefully you've created a relationship with that person to where you can reach out and help them. And I think for this particular somebody that is recovering, I think a family atmosphere is certainly something that they need. Some of them, obviously, like I said before, have a good family at home, but that doesn't mean that they're close with that family because of everything that's gone on. So they can always use a support net.
You get to know people pretty well. Let's face it, I think we're around our coworkers and our employees more than our family. Yes. You get to know them better than our families and their behaviors. And so it's noticeable. Like Matt said, there should be some sort of a drug testing program if your state allows it. Talk to an attorney about that. It's difficult in California now, especially where smoking weed is legal.
Right. Yeah. So
there's some real gray areas that they're still trying to figure out.
Right.
So, yeah.
Eric, if I'm an owner and through observation and performance, I discover that a team member of mine is a problem, what do I, as the owner or the supervisor, do?
In my experience, or in post treatment recovery. I would say, in my experience, you get fired, and you went on to the next job. I've literally gone to the tavern on Friday night and worked at a new job on Monday.
Okay, and you celebrated that you got fired, right?
Well, no, I mean, either I was dismissed and changed, or I went to lunch and didn't come back. I mean, I've done a lot of that as a business owner myself now. It's different. I would try to reach out, but at the same time, the one thing that, not to be throw shade on the subject or be the buzzkill on all this, but the Shangri-La of this family environment shop, it's kind of probably like the 5 to 10% of the market. The most of, technicians work paycheck to paycheck. I worked as a very high functioning alcoholic and addict. It's my best work after lunch. I literally have, I have done some crazy things. I've actually been to the point where I couldn't physically make it home by having one eye closed and pulled into the shop parking lot. There were 2 dogs in the shop that I knew were going to bother me. I put myself in a customer's car that was on the lift, raised the lift all the way up, and woke up in the following morning to everybody screaming, "Where the F is Eric? He should be here right now," or whatever. We'd be like, "Somebody put the lift down and I'll come to work." Just absolute insane stuff that happens. But I think.
Were you fired?
No, no, because I worked at a shop that everybody, work hard, play hard together. It was a community that's kind of like, there are a lot of that way. You go, not to throw shade on training conferences. You go to big training conferences and there is a lot of drinking that goes on. There is, to Sherry's credit at Vision, there is a 12-step meeting at every Vision. When I went through treatment, I'm an old deadhead, and I went through a 28-day program, and they said to me, "New faces, new places. Music is a trigger. You can't go to could you go to a Grateful Dead show and not drink or drug?" And I said, "Well, it shows what you know about it. The Wharf Rats are a 12-step group that have met at set break at every Grateful Dead show since 1968. So I am the antithesis of the repair community. I was told that 1 in 25 would make it in my group. I was told that I would never make it. And myself and one other individual made it, and he relapsed and went on. And I'm just kind of stubborn that way. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and enough was enough, as Rob said. But there are it's a multifaceted thing. To Tanner's point, it's a family disease. It affects businesses. It affects families. And to how do you recognize it? You could have, if you've Rob's obviously got good metrics on production and things like that. If you're the majority of 2-hole, 3-hole shops in middle America, you may not know, other than the guy comes in late, or you got to bail him out to go to
Doesn't
work.
show up.
I've been there, done that. I literally worked for a shop that myself and another individual had revoked driver's licenses. And when I would be late, the owner would punish me by making me drive to the county jail with no driver's license with his vehicle to get the other technician who was coming out of work release.
Oh my God.
I always used to joke that one of these days they're going to let him out and put me in. But just the craziness that goes on with it, that it's just so multifaceted that people, as far as they always say, addicts and alcoholics are the best liars. You know what I mean? We lied to ourselves about all of this for years. I knew I needed help when I was 11 years old, and it took till I was 27 to get help for what I needed. But again, was highly functioning, drivability technician, probably didn't do this, good at work as I do now. But it's one of those things that it's hard to realize as far as the drug testing goes. What if you are, just being devil's advocate, say you are a cancer patient and you're in, 27 states have medicinal marijuana cards for people. Like, are you going to actually go and test somebody for a drug and say, oh, or you have recreational use? Like, you have to be able to differentiate, like, hey, I had an edible at a show in Red Rocks or whatever that was perfectly legal, and you're going to terminate my employment You know what I mean? That's always been a different thing for me.
So I want to go. I
agree.
want to go back to my question from a while back. What do we do upon discovery of a problem with an individual?
I would say reach out to them, but at the same time, your interventions rarely work.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
And a active drug addict, alcoholic is a protected class in the state of California. So you've got to tread lightly, and you've got to get legal involved on exactly. And it's going to be case to case, Carm. It's going to be case to case how you handle it. Hopefully, we can have a discussion where they take some time off and get that taken care of, and naturally we're going to help them. But
and let me hear that. Let me hear. That's where I'm driving toward, Rob. Naturally, we're going to help them. How?
Well, I know of a lot of programs and resources that we have available. Some of them free, and some of them covered by our medical insurance. But again, they've got to be done. If they play the denial card, like you're full of it, and that's not true, and that's not happening, then you can't help them.
Which is more the norm, right?
Yeah,
more
absolutely.
often than not. And as far as the recovery community goes, that's like paid prisons, right? That like everybody's outsourcing jails or whatever to third-party people. It is big business to have in the recovery community for 28-day programs and 30-day programs. And if you don't have the insurance to do it, I was lucky enough that I had been fired from a job, and I went through on $1 a day. Other than that, like if you were self-pay, it can be $25,000, $35,000, $50,000.
It's very expensive nowadays. When I went through the rehab that I went to, Valley Hope, they have locations all around the country. I happened to go through in Arizona. They allowed you to do a payment plan, believe it or not. But back then it was $7,000. I think the same program now is 15. So yeah, it's not cheap for that 30-day program. But we're also talking about a foundation that works. You need a good foundation. Without a foundation, you're building your house on sand, and it's going to fall.
So do you have an EAP there?
Say that again?
Do you use it, or do you have an EAP as part of your benefits package?
I'm not
I
familiar
don't even say because I don't remember the acronym.
Employee Assistance Program.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I believe that the payback on that's significant. For $1 invested, you get like $4 that goes towards something that might go towards treatment, maybe.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I have not heard of that program as part of our medical, but I'll investigate that. That's a great option.
Is that maybe like a health savings account, possibly something similar?
I think an HSA is a totally different category.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's worth checking into. We have a lot of free resources in our area. Some of them are 30 days, some of them are 6 months, and some of them are 1 year. And everybody's situation is going to be different. One of the key things that I think is very important is that you do recognize it as early as possible. Really, the main thing is the safety of the people, the individual, and the people that work around them. If we're talking a technician, especially, very, very important.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I think Rob alluded to it earlier. This sounds cruel, but it's their addiction. And
it's tough love, isn't it?
It's rough. But you have to walk this line between supporting their recovery versus enabling their addiction.
And protecting the business and the people.
Right, you have to protect the business and your other employees. Absolutely.
And Eric, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm finished.
I was just going to say, Eric alluded to something earlier that's pretty important and I think critical to talk about is the success rate for us addicts is not very good. At least the first time around, second time around, third. I happen to be one of the rare individuals that got it the first time. That's just by the grace of God. I cannot tell you how many people have. I know people. I have 19 years clean. God willing, this year will be 20. But the people that I went through rehab with that have 12 and 11 and 15 and 7 all had to go back out and continue to write their story for a little while. Now they've got it, but they didn't get it at the same time I got it. We went through rehab at the same time. So honestly, the success rate is less than 10%.
Absolutely. Less
than 10%. And what's amazing, and I will mention this, faith-based, Christ-centered programs is over 80%. It is what it is. I'm just stating facts.
80% success rate?
80% or above success rate in Teen Challenge and others like Teen Challenge that are national, that are, again, Christ-centered, faith-based. Their success, and now they do have a 1-year separate you from your world program. You don't talk to anybody that's in your world for, I think, 90 days. You're not allowed phone privileges. I mean, they have a very, very strict program in order to accomplish that, but the results are there. The results don't lie.
Okay, guys, thank you. Hey, when a customer's vehicle, engine, or transmission fails, it's not the end of the road. A remanufactured drivetrain product from Jasper Engines and Transmissions will give your customer's car a new lease on life. Go to jasperengines.com for more information. They want to become Repair Pal certified? Well, you'll need a minimum of a 12/12 warranty, a shop management system, a high customer satisfaction score, and recent tech training. Learn about their free tech training programs at repairpal.com/shops. Okay. Do you have to have the right atmosphere, the right culture inside the company so that a recovering addict feels safe?
I think it doesn't hurt. And I think, having something set up to reward them as they go and continue to help them as they go, can't hurt either. I think anything that you can possibly do to try to help that person. Obviously, like Eric said, it's definitely rare in the automotive community. I mean, we see it driving around. We can see the good shops and bad shops, and we know what the majority is. So it's certainly not the norm. But I think if you have somebody there that's struggling, I think that's something that you should consider trying to make sure of, that you have a good atmosphere and that you're doing something to continue to help that person, whether it's celebrating, a year, a year sober, 2 years sober, whatever it may be, and whether maybe you give them a raise or something throughout that year, when the year's over. I don't know, something to help that person. But I definitely think a good atmosphere can't hurt.
And the atmosphere might be just respecting the their issue, their disease, that the Christmas party isn't at a bar.
Exactly.
And that maybe fellow employees aren't always ridiculing the addict, because
Great point.
a year or two ago they fell off the wagon for a while, went to treatment, came back, they're struggling, but they're a productive employee and all that. They're a good employee. They had an issue, but your other employees aren't always leveraging that against them. That's I would think is vastly more important than
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, some like I think Eric said Shangri-La, it's more just respect, a little bit of respect. And I think that comes with the stigma of addiction is this misunderstanding of what it is.
Matthew, you just mentioned don't have a party at a bar, but what about the opioid crisis?
Well, it's definitely growing. It's the entryway a lot of times isn't just, hey, what do you got that's better than this? A lot of it's medical. They start out with pain pills.
Blew my knee out, little white soccer.
Yep. And
high school soccer players from Naperville, Illinois.
And I don't want to imply that everybody that takes pain pills will become addicted to them, but there is a segment of people that the way their brains are wired will become dependent on that feeling. And over time, the hooks dig deeper and deeper. And then when the prescription runs out, now they're going on the street. And they usually start out getting the prescription. If they're getting Vicodin, and now they're no longer getting Vicodin for legal prescription, they're going to the street and they're getting Vicodin.
Yeah.
And then one day they're going to the dealer, and the dealer's like, man, why do you spend so much money on Vikes? Try some of this. It's the same thing. They're not completely wrong, but that's the entryway to heroin.
Of course it is.
And now you have the wiring already for an addictive I don't want to say personality, but an addiction. And now you're feeding it this beast. It is a really tough road to hoe to get out of that. People that do it they're just warriors. Any of them really.
I always equated it to a bee sting. That like some people can go and have one beer after work and go, hey, I got to go home to my family. And there's the other person that has one that's going to turn it into 40 and maybe make it to work, but I'm driving home drunk. I always looked at it as a bee sting. There's some people get stung by a bee, get a little small, ow, that kind of hurt. I get a little welt in my arm, and there's other people that go into anaphylactic shock.
Sure.
Both a bee sting, it's just how the chemical process of your body and your brain, you know, I know I have a compulsive personality that like manifests itself in many things, scan tools and, you know,
Absolutely.
OCD behavior, things like that.
Yep, yep.
And it's just a matter of like channeling it to a point, but it's very, I don't know, the thing that it is that we have such a low success rate at it. I would say that yes, you as a shop, you have to try to promote that culture, but at the same time, you have to protect yourself because, you know, it's epidemic. I really believe that in this country, you could go eeny, meeny, miny, mo, like every third house, somebody has something that they're either addicted to, they deal with addiction first rate, or they have family members, or they have coworkers, or they had a parent. And it is an epidemic in this country that is never addressed, and people don't talk about it. I'll tell anybody that wants to know, anybody that wants to hear about it. I find myself, I've actually introduced myself to, hi, I'm Eric. I'm an alcoholic. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm Eric.
Wrong
I'm
meeting.
the business
Wrong
owner.
meeting.
Yeah. And I figure if it comes out of my mouth, and somebody will say like, why did you tell me that? And I said, if it comes out of my mouth at least once a day, that I can't talk myself into doing something else.
The one thing about the
27
opiate,
years for me this May, God forbid, God willing.
God
the
bless
one
you.
thing with the opiates is opiate users have resources that many other addicts do not have. And there's medication-assisted treatments that work really, really well to give these people their lives back. Granted, they're exchanging one addiction for another, but they can go on a methadone or a Suboxone, and now they can be functional. They get their life back. There's no more, without massive doses to get the euphoric reaction from using whatever the drug of choice was, the opiate was. They can take this stuff, get their life back, have a job, have their family back, all these things. So if somebody is on a medication-assisted treatment program, I don't know if I'd be frowning on it. I would be very happy about it because it really stacks the odds in their favor.
Drug screen.
What's that?
How do you have a clean drug screen if you're on, you know, an opiate like methadone, Suboxone, something like that, you know?
Yeah, I think
But
the
it
screening
raises
can
those
come back. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
the whole
Good
drug
point.
screen thing.
And I hope this is a good time to drop this or talk about this, and then I got to go to the background, I think. Our brains are really amazing machines, biochemical machines. The reason we're here, the reason that we're dominating the planet is because of our prejudices and our reward system. And today we're talking about the reward system, our brain reward system. And there's a big argument between the medical side of things and the scientific, like the neurobiologists, about if this is a real disease or if this is something with neuroplasticity. But this is our reward system. We're built to get a chemical dose of reward, primarily probably dopamine, when we do something that benefits us greatly. We eat something that's highly nutritious caloric value, you know, fatty foods, sugar, salt, big rewards. Same thing with sex. They take a brain image of somebody in the midst of orgasm versus somebody getting high on heroin. It's almost a mirror image. Okay, so we have this reward system built in, and now we have a disorder, whether it's a kind of a disfiguration, whatever we want to call it, a disease that amplifies that need. And because we're so smart, we've now created ways that instead of getting that reward from the hunt that led to the kill that fed the village, I can do this synthetically by inhaling this, injecting that. And not only does the chemical reproduce this feeling, it does things to the brain that makes it need more. This is the battle these addicts fight, is so wiring issues, and then what the chemicals they're taking in or the behaviors they're doing affects their brain, the way it actively rewires the brain. So Carm, you might fancy yourself a pretty good driver, but if we took you to New York and put you in a cab, your brain would be wired a certain way and you would react a certain way. But in a few weeks, it's old hat. No problem. You've learned how to drive. Your body
So are you
changes. Your
saying
brain changes.
you're saying that I get rewired based on my experiences, and that's then no different than the drug addiction?
There's not as much difference as you think. There's a lot of parallels.
What do you got to say about all that, Rob?
Well, that's pretty deep, isn't it? Certainly, we can get accustomed to anything and allow, one of the chapters of my book talks about the law of exposure, right? And it's reliable as the law of gravity. So what I expose myself to, I shall become. If I hang around bank robbers, I'm going to become a bank robber. If I hang around cowboys, I'm going to become a cowboy. If I hang around God-fearing Christian men that want to do the best that they can with their family and their lives, and I'm going to become a God-fearing Christian man that wants to do the best he can with his family and his life. So, and it's so important that we continue to expose ourselves to those positive things because our brains are wired with that. I'm with Matt 100%. I've learned that, yeah, I can go to a bar. I can be around alcohol. I can be around people smoking weed. I'm past that point in my life, but why risk it? Why even be around that and allow that to become normal or acceptable? Again, for me, we talk about a Christmas party. We have non-alcoholic Christmas parties just because of that fact, not just the liability, because I don't want to be the tool that allows my people to start being exposed to the atmosphere and considers it normal. That's just my thinking because it's not normal for me. I know what it will do for me. I'm just one drink away from being a statistic like the rest of them.
Rob, you decided to be done, and I think you were standing in front of or sitting down in front of your parole officer.
That's
and
right.
And it's very early on in the book, and that was the moment that hit you. Could you take us to that?
I was sitting and it was probation intake, and at probation intake, they give you a big thick packet of papers that you fill out. They want to know about your life history, your drug history, your work history, and family history, domestic violence. And I was at a fork in the road, wasn't I? I was at a fork in the road where I was going to continue to try and lie and play this game that I played, and very likely end up getting called on the probation and doing the 2 years in prison because I couldn't sustain that if I kept doing what I was doing, or I was going to fill it out honestly. And with the crack pipe still warm in my pocket, I decided that I was done. And I filled out that packet with complete honesty and transparency, knowing that after I turned it in, she could come back in and revoke my probation. She didn't. God bless her, she came in and said, come on in my office. And she's very sarcastically said to me, well, I guess we don't need, I had been awake for 3 days doing dope prior to this meeting. I couldn't stay clean and sober. So she, and I put that on the packet, and she said to me, well, I guess we don't need to waste our money on a drug test, do we? And we started that very day getting my life back in order.
Rob, did you throw the crack pipe away?
I did. I threw the crack pipe on the way to recovery about a block away to show my wife I was serious. I threw the crack pipe out the window. And when we got to the rehab, I sat there in fear and chain smoked while my wife went inside and told them we were there. She came back to the car, and there I was on one knee with my head planted in the passenger seat floorboard area, burning my fingers and burning my lips, trying to smoke what was left of that broken crack pipe to get one more hit before I finally surrendered. And by the grace of God, I stood up and surrendered and walked into that rehab.
Wow.
That's all in chapter 1 and 2.
Yeah, it was great book. How does anyone get a chance to read that book?
My book is Addicted to Life: How I Went from Homeless to Extraordinary Success and Happiness in a Short Period of Time. You can get it on Amazon. Just search for my last name, Rowsell, Rowsell, or Addicted to Life. You'll be able to find us. $25, including shipping. It's the best $1 million that you'll buy for $25 this year, 2019. I will tell you, for those of you that aren't addicts, The first half of each chapter is about my story. The second half of each chapter is for normies. It talks about the principles of success that I use to get out of that lifestyle, and how we all can utilize those principles of success to go to the next level, whatever that level is for each and every one of us.
Well,
And you said you were going to be at Vision too, correct?
I'll be at Vision. I have a
So-
booth, a vendor's booth there to actually distribute books as well. Thank you for reminding me that I'll be there, my friend.
You're welcome. Wanted everybody to know they could stop by and meet you.
Yeah.
I think that
Come by and say hello. That'll be fun.
that's a great point, Tanner. And this is an epidemic, and it's going on bigger than I think any of us know.
Agreed.
And
Yeah.
Rob, by just you being there, not there to sell your book, but there to probably give advice and to put an arm around someone, mano to mano, is a great thing. So thanks for that. I want to have each of you do a quick summary for us. Once I give high fives again to the people that bring this free resource to the aftermarket. Jasper, they've got over 2,000 associates. Did you know? 3 manufacturing facilities, 2 distribution centers, and 45 branch offices all across our great country. They're all working to produce, transport, and deliver to you the perfect product. And that's what they do best. Keep customers happy so you can. Thanks, Jasper, for supporting the Town Hall Academy. And Repair Pal. Hey, did you know that 2,200 shops get an average of 8 to 12 new customer calls from Repair Pal every month? There are no long-term contracts and referrals from partners like CarMax and USAA. You even get more value from them. Thanks for Repair Pal, repairpal.com/shops. I really think we got done what I wanted to get done, everyone. This was a very wide open, broad discussion. I think it's going to do the aftermarket good once we repurpose this as a podcast and a video next week. Please keep an eye out on the Facebook the video over the weekend. And as guests, please offer your comments and likes and what's going to go on in that Facebook feed. So let's go around the room. Eric, any final words?
Thing I would say would be to the still, I kind of didn't do all 12 steps of the 12-step recovery. I picked and chose a few. Like I said, I did it all the wrong way by a lot of people's standards. There are people, there's a group here that is a agnostic atheistic club that has the most sobriety out of any AA club in this city. And they are the most bunch of godless people, but there is deep sobriety in there. So that it's not just all one cookie cutter solution to it. I believe in a higher power that restored myself to sanity. But that's just me. There are, I would say, never give up. If you are a person that is in the depths of your depravity, there is always a way out. You got to believe in yourself. The other thing that a lot of people fall into the category is that there is some moral shortcoming, like there is something spiritually wrong with you, that you are morally or spiritually bankrupt because you're an addict or an alcoholic. And like Matt said, there's a lot of science behind this, and that I am living proof that there is life after substance abuse. And like I said, I will be celebrating my 27th year, God willing, later this year.
Thank God you did it, because if not, I would not have known you, Eric.
Oh, that's a fact. I'd have been dead many years ago. So I've always looked at this as my second chance in life. And I just kind of switched my compulsions or whatever to working on cars, diagnosing cars, and to the community that I'm around. You know what I mean? The company you keep, there is something to be said there. That you surround yourself with strong people. And my mother, God rest her soul, was very involved in Al-Anon for years, well after myself. My mom and dad were gotten divorced after 33 years of being married. My mom went through this epiphany from, we called the Enlightenment, to where it went from being Sally Super Catholic to, hey, honey, you want another beer, to like questioning everything. Everybody had a problem. And we, both my brother and myself, my uncle and my dad was long gone, were sober many, many years. My mom would still go to multiple Al-Anon meetings a week. And I was like, why do you do it? And she said, it presupposes that I go because of you when I go for myself. So it is a family disease. And for people that don't understand the enabling, that fine line that Matt talked about, there is help. That 12-step isn't just for people that are in recovery or of recovery. There are people of substance abuse. There is 12-step support groups for Alateen, Al-Anon, for family members, that you realize that it is a family disease that goes generations deep in my family.
Thanks, man. Tanner? Oh, by the way, congrats to your recovery. Thank you for being here and so honest and transparent with us. Appreciate that. Tanner?
That's how I roll.
First thing I want to do is thank Eric, because if it wasn't for him being around, myself and everyone else in our group wouldn't know what we do today. So, and he's a big reason we continue to go to training. As far as my closing statements, I want to remind everybody, as Eric said, it's a family disease. So you're not only helping the addict, but if you can help them stay clean and help them beat the disease, you can potentially help the entire family and make everything better for them.
That's right.
Relationships in that family, everything as a whole. So you can really help a large amount of people by helping just one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Rob?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody that's on this panel. Great contributions, great input. I think two things. Number one is that same negative energy that just destroys an addict's life, pointed in the right direction, they can do amazing, amazing, amazing things. They are what Eric alluded to as a OCD, or whether it's just focus, whether it's driven, whatever you want to call it, they have that. They just need to get it focused in the right direction. Number two is my wife of 20 years, who's never used a drink or drug in her life, lived that homeless drug addict lifestyle with me through all of that. She's now reaping the rewards of her faith. It's all talked about pretty heavily in the book, and it isn't plugged for the book. My point is this is a family disease, 100%. And by healing the addict, it's amazing the healing that takes place in the family. So that is very important. So I'm glad that was brought up as well.
And thank you for being open and honest and transparent, Rob. Thank you so much for being here. Matt, I'll give you the last word. You're a normie.
One whole word. I think I used them up. I guess, honestly, a couple things. One is, I was talking about our brains being machines. We run programs. Look around you. Watch how people act. They're running programs.
Yeah.
And how those programs are created, that would be a whole nother episode or 10. But that understand that there's more going on than just a lack of willpower, or like everybody really has said, that it's not a corruption of a person. There is an issue. And I kind of wanted to say something when Eric said something about cancer. If you had an employee who had to go to treatment, stop working for cancer to get treatment, how would you feel about them? Now let's take the same person, no cancer, but an addiction, and they have to leave to go get treatment. Your perception of that is vastly different, and it might have to change a little bit. And then I guess a closing statement would be for everybody, addicts, normies alike, that the easy part really of recovery sobriety is initially stopping using that chemical, that substance, or doing that activity. The hard part is now living life without it. And it's a battle.
It is a day-to-day battle, isn't it?
And they always say the 10%'s the drinking, 90%'s the thinking, you know what I mean? And the one thing that you can always realize with an addict and an alcoholic, I'll try to keep it as G-rated, the addict alcoholic's favorite two words are F it, and it's always, everything is so catastrophically, like, you would not believe the bad luck that is befallen me. Pour me another drink, right? But like I said, there's a lot of science to what Matt says, that and the other thing is we chronically underfund mental health. The jails are filled with people. We arrest addicts, we don't arrest the addiction.
And they don't treat them, and we didn't even bring that up. We didn't.
That's a whole show in itself.
untreated mental illness, driving people to self-medicate. We didn't even touch that.
Yep.
Each and every Town Hall Academy goes places I never expect.
Especially with me, right?
Oh, especially with Eric. So thank you
Got to
all for
ride
being.
along.
Thank you, Matt Fanslow, Eric Ziegler, Rob Rowsell, and Tanner Brandt.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Thank you, Carm, for shining a light on this very important subject. And thanks,
Thanks,
you, panel.
guys. Have a great
Thanks for doing
weekend.
this.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good day, everybody.
Yep, you too.